Hello and welcome to Civics. I'm Michael Shea, the host of Civics, a program on Arlington Independent Media. This program is about meeting people in the community who've been involved in their community for a long time and are sharing their experience with us. We're joined today by Charlie Meng, who's the Executive Director of the Arlington Food Assistance Center, or AFAC as it's known. Charlie has been involved with the community in different ways. He's been an ANC representative in the District of Columbia. He's been involved with arts organizations. He's been involved with universities. He's been involved with land preservation organizations. So it's great to have him on the program today. Charlie, thanks for coming on Civics.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Charlie, now let's go back. Can you remember the first time you were involved in your community and what was it?
I think the very first time I remember is in sophomore year in college, where I went to the Hillside Children's Center in Rochester, New York, and helped with developmentally disabled children. That was a really meaningful occasion for me. Mm-hmm. I did it for about 2 years, and it was a break from the monotony of college, the snow in Rochester, New York, and the cold.
It was a program organized by the college as a volunteer?
No, it was actually organized by the local Red Cross chapter. And so I had found that myself outside of the college. I really felt that getting some greater experience and doing some real service was much more important at times.
Right. I totally understand about the snow. I was accepted by the University of Rochester, went up to visit, and what impressed me was, first of all, a lot of smart students there. It seemed like a great university, but almost all of them were saying, "Don't come here, there's too much snow."
Right.
So I ended up much farther south. But what were you like as a student, going back maybe to high school or to college?
Really, I was a fairly poor student, as a matter of fact. I think that my best friends were the last 10 guys in the class at Fordham Prep, all that time ago. Part of that was simply because I grew up in higher education and had a certain disdain for it. It didn't really reflect my intelligence, I don't think.
Okay, but then you got involved with the community when you were an undergraduate.
Yes.
And then as you got on and started thinking about your career, you then have been involved with different community organizations. What are some of the organizations you've been involved with early on?
Well, early on, it was I was elected an ANC Commissioner, Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner for Georgetown, which really dealt with a lot of the zoning issues in Georgetown, and you can imagine Georgetown is a very sensitive environment. So there were a lot of different concerns, a lot of different citizen groups that had to be listened to. And of course, the Board of Zoning Adjustment in the city had to give what was then called great weight to whatever the decision was of the local Advisory Neighborhood Commission. So it really gave me a very early view on how citizen organizations in the community function together, function politically together. And it also gave me a good sense of how to get those disparate constituencies to all work in one direction.
We should explain, the ANC, I don't know if it's that common around the country. It's a part of the District of Columbia's government.
Right.
You're obviously below a city council member. It's not a paid position, for one thing.
No, it is not.
And so it's really up to the person to kind of make the most of it.
It's the lowest level elected office, okay? There are something like 85 ANCs throughout the city. Each of them have upwards of 8 or 9 members. So that's a lot of positions that are available. But it is a very important position. And it does have a lot of influence with the local city government. And that's much different than here in Arlington County. You know, in Arlington County, we have all of our board members are elected at large. In the District of Columbia, they're elected by ward. So people only care about what's happening in that ward. Yet, there's a lot of different citizen groups and they want to have their say too.
Right.
So it's really democracy in action in the very lowest level of it. And it's really interesting how that low-level democracy rises through the offices. And it's really the base, and it's a great experience, great place to get some fantastic experience.
It sort of takes a similar role to what a civic association might do
Oh,
in
yes.
Arlington County.
Yeah.
But you're elected, and you have a little more formal role within the city government. As you say, on certain issues, they have to take great weight
Right.
to what the ANC is coming up with. Yeah.
Well, even with an ANC, you still had a local civic organization, the business and professional organization, and Georgetown actually has 3 different areas that make up it. So you have 3 different citizen organizations. So even there, there were a lot of constituencies that you had to weigh and balance their interests.
And then you were working for the university at the time as well.
Yes, I was.
So you had that institutional knowledge about it, and that probably helped you as an ANC commissioner.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was at the same time the vice president for administration and responsible for a fairly aggressive building campaign. In the 7 years I was there, we built 23 buildings, all different sizes. But all of those had to be reviewed by the local ANC and all of those citizen organizations. And so, having a foot in the door there was a great help. But I think more importantly, it was, I was in a position at the university where I could address the citizens' needs. And I learned very quickly that compromise is important. We were trying to build all of these buildings, but the prices kept on going up. So I needed to get buildings built in a timely fashion. So compromise and changing things is sometimes the best route.
To what extent do you think you learned on the job as an ANC commissioner? To what extent was there things you already brought to it? What was the balance there?
That's very difficult, Mike, because I said I was a poor student, but on the other hand, I've had these jobs where basically I've been thrown into them and said, essentially I had to swim.
Right.
So you learn a few things very quickly. You learn to trust your gut, for instance. Okay, your gut really does want to protect you. And if your gut says this doesn't sound right, you should really not do it. The gut is not always right, but it's pretty 95% correct. That was one of the things. I think the other thing is approaching people, in a friendly and generous way. It's really, it's that first impression people have of you that can really set the tone for the future. And of course, I also believe in just plain old absolute honesty. Honest in financial transactions, obviously, and the accounting for all of those, but also honest in, personal relations. And I've had to say some really difficult things to some fairly important people. And it's so much how you say it more than anything else. And I'm not sure you learn that in school.
Right.
That's an on-the-job learning lesson.
Or you could have learned it from other life experiences.
Yes.
But not, in the classroom. You were also involved with the AFAC Foundation.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes.
So how did that come about, and what did you do for that?
A friend of mine became the executive director down there.
Okay.
And the AFAC Foundation was founded to protect the view shed from the porch at Mount Vernon, the view across the river. There had been a proposal to build a very large gas refinery on that site. So the local citizens got together, formed the AFAC Foundation, gave scenic easements to their properties to the foundation, and the foundation bought about 4,000 acres of land, which they then deeded over to the National Park Service.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that will always be protected. When you stand on the porch at Mount Vernon, it's the Accokeek Foundation that's protecting the view that George Washington looked at when he was on that porch.
Right. So you had that experience, and you had the experience before with the ANC and the building, being involved with the building and construction related to Georgetown. So you probably have a good sense of when communities develop or not develop areas, there's a lot of collaboration, teamwork, coordination that goes on. You probably developed a large sense of that. How has that helped you in other things you've been involved with?
I think what it has done is made me look at things, look at decisions in a much broader sort of sense, to try to bring in many more people into the discussion process. That's one of the things you do learn in higher education. Faculty want to be listened to, students do, alumni do, so you get very quickly a habit of talking to as many people as possible, listening to what their concerns are, and then trying to meld that into something that as many of those people will find acceptable. Some of them obviously won't, but if you can give most people what they want, that's the best thing possible. And I think that's one of the lessons that I learned in that whole process.
Now, you also have a law degree.
Yes, I do.
To what extent has that been a good thing?
Well,
are you glad you went to law school?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay, right.
absolutely. I must say, though, that my habits in high school and college continued with me in law school. But no, that has allowed me to look at contracts of all sorts. It's allowed me to look at personnel contracts, human resource issues, insurance issues, all sorts of issues. Really, when you sign your name to any document, that's a contract. And a lot of people don't understand that, and they don't know how to read that horrid language. And actually, they do teach you how to read that language and understand it.
Right.
Which is even worse, that you actually understand this stuff. So it's been very helpful. I know how to deal with lawyers, and I can pretty much make sure that when I make an agreement, it's going to stand.
And then when did you get involved with Food and Friends, and how did you get involved with them?
I had been working for the D.C. government as head of personnel operations.
Oh, that's right. You moved on from the university into city government.
Right. And that was a political appointment. That was another thing I should never have done. It was the D.C. government, and I was used to employees being a little bit more responsive than they were there. And then one day I couldn't get out of my house until 10 o'clock in the morning, and then proceeded to have an accident. And that was a message to me that I really needed a change. And so I left the city government and started a small construction company. Some people had said, hey, while you're looking for a job, can you paint my kitchen? And so I did that for a few years. And at that time, I really wanted something more than simply making money. So I went over to Food and Friends and volunteered. At that time, they were down kind of where the Nats Stadium is.
Oh, okay.
National Stadium.
Right.
They used to be down there.
Yeah.
And I just volunteered in the kitchen, prepared food in the morning. I got there at about 5 o'clock in the morning and stayed until 9, and then I went to work. So I put in 4 hours each morning, twice a week. And it was all making food. It was preparing meals for individuals who were disabled and could not leave their houses. Initially, it was folks with HIV/AIDS, and they've expanded their mission now to include other life-threatening diseases.
Okay.
But I spent 9 years there volunteering, and I think that was one of the things that really got me into the Arlington Food Assistance Center.
Right.
I had not heard about that until I'd seen an ad on Craigslist, of all places, applied for it, got the job as director of operations, And I really liked it. I felt comfortable there because that's another big volunteer organization.
Right.
And Food and Friends is a very big volunteer organization. So I really learned a lot while I was working at Food and Friends that has really helped me at the Arlington Food Assistance Center. Handling other volunteers is
Right.
one of them. You know, AFAC has 1,600 very dedicated volunteers. And, you know, I think those 9 years of working as a volunteer
Right.
gave me a lot of knowledge and experience to be able to manage and deal with a very large volunteer organization.
Right. That is quite an impressive number
Yeah.
of volunteers.
It really is.
And you were I think you were awarded Volunteer of the Year
Yes, twice.
twice at Food and
was it.
Friends. That's certainly a big honor.
Yeah. Well, I'm also happy that I spent over 2,080 hours there, which is a whole
That's a
work
work week.
year. I'm
Feels a
very
work
happy to have exceeded that well, as a matter of fact. So I'm very happy.
Then you moved over to AFAC, and how long ago was that? Or
That was 5 years ago.
Okay.
A little bit over 5, maybe 5.5. Started as director of operations.
Right.
And really, when I first got there, it needed a lot of change. It had been an all-volunteer organization. They had just hired their first executive director prior to me. And yet they needed a lot of new systems
Right.
and new management
Right.
to it. So ultimately, the executive director left, and the board appointed me as executive director.
were they at a point where they were scaling up operations to a great deal? Was that what motivated
Yes.
to create the executive director position in the first place?
Well, the first, for much of AFAC's life, it was all run by volunteers. The board of directors was all volunteer. The board would decide how much we were going to buy eggs for this week or that week. Then it hired its general manager part-time. And then I think in the real big increase in AFAC numbers came with 9/11. You know, when they shut down the airport and a lot of those restaurant folks just were out of business.
Yeah.
They all came to AFAC. So AFAC shot up to about 500 families. And then with the recession,
Right.
we hit 2,152 families on average each week.
Right.
That's about 4,200 individuals. That was the peak. It has since leveled out a little bit, but right before Thanksgiving, it took a really large jump to 2,152 families, a 400 family increase from the last high point, which was, 2 years prior.
Yeah, I think that's a statistic that people probably should be more aware of, in the sense that Arlington is, by other measures, one of the richer counties in the country.
Absolutely.
And by measurements of unemployment, is among the lowest in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And yet, there is this need within the community.
Right.
That's
And
can grow.
and you see, the whole problem with unemployment, particularly here in Arlington County, is that unemployment is focused on the lowest income individuals in our community. You know, when you look at the higher income levels,
Right.
Most of those people are fully employed and will be, even if they change jobs, that's because they decided.
Right.
And the unemployment is really focused on those lower income people, the day laborers, the restaurant workers, fast food service workers, and all sorts of other folks who basically get minimum wage, never get enough hours to create a full-time work week, and certainly don't get benefits. And those are the individuals. You know, the average income of our family is $20,000. You know,
Right.
you cannot live in Arlington on $20,000. And I don't know how these families do. But they do. Because there is something still about Arlington that draws them here.
Right. A lot of great things about Arlington.
Absolutely.
And just so we don't miss part of the story, so you basically you moved from D.C. to Arlington at some point, or you became your community involvement shifted.
Yes.
And was that a conscious decision, or just looking for opportunities, and so? AFAC?
Well, I think the thread that has always gone through my life is wanting to provide service to our community in one way or another. You know, working in a large institution like Georgetown, you're still serving a very good and necessary public social purpose. At the Kennedy Center, of course, we were putting on plays that for the public in many, many ways. So I was still doing service. Even at the DC government, which I didn't particularly like, I was still providing service. And that's what I do even today.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me excited. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what, you know, really gets me going, is the ability to really serve people. And here at AFAC, I think it's really even better because the distance between myself and the people we serve is literally that glass window from my office to our waiting room.
Right.
I see the people we serve every day. I see the people and talk to the people that really need our help. And we're helping these people. We are a very, we provide very good food. We provide a very good service to this community. And people rely on us. And that is what gets me going in the morning.
And normally I ask people, who have they worked with that kind of has either inspired them or motivated them? But it sounds like for you, it's that, it's not who you're working with, it's who you provide service to.
Well, I think, you know, there is one person, and it's my father.
Okay.
He was in higher education all of his life. He was a college professor. He's the person that I have always looked up to as a role model. I've tried to soften some of his harder tendencies in that, but I think in the end he's really the guy that gave me that inspiration.
Right. Where was he university president? What are some of the places? I guess he was more than one
Hunter
place.
College,
Hunter College.
Tusculum University, St. John's University, Seton Hall, a number of places.
Okay.
Marymount, Terrytown.
The other Marymount.
The other Marymount. And
Not the one up the road here.
In fact, the funny story is, when I was a high school student and he was president at Marymount Terrytown, he came in and he said, well, I've signed away all of the other Marymounts. And we said, what do you mean you signed away? He said, all of the other Marymount colleges in the United States were owned by Marymount Terrytown. Literally owned, okay? And he had to sign the deeds to pass
give them
the property to those institutions and their boards. So the deed to Marymount University here in Arlington has my father's signature on it. One of those little things that come about in life.
Yeah, that is very odd.
It is.
Was it his decision?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a collective decision.
That's sort of a legacy that no one will ever hear. Well, they're hearing about it now, but I mean, that's sort of one of these legacies that someone made a good decision, and the Marymount here has been growing and doing very well.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, this one is doing far better than the one up in Terrytown, which is now closed. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's an ironic decision then.
Right, right.
And so what, that's what's motivated you all these years. What advice do you have for students today about the community? Do you have advice? What would you say to students? What do you say to students, I guess?
Well, I'm not quite sure sometimes what to say to students.
Yeah.
I think, they have to trust themselves.
Right.
And they have to do what they feel is best for themselves and for others in the community. And look at the bigger picture sometimes and not focus on the small picture. The small picture is those details that really don't matter when it comes to life. I'm 62 years old. I don't know where those 62 years went. I really, really don't. But I think I can say that I've been honest to most everybody in my life, and tried to do what is best for them, and that's where I come from.
Yeah.
So it's really, don't sweat that small stuff. It's really the bigger stuff, the longer term stuff, the stuff that's going to, affect you in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, or 10 years down the line.
Right.
You really have to keep that long-term focus about where you're going.
But that leads to my next question. So what's next for you, do you think? Obviously, you're happy at AFAC, and you'll continue on there, but do you have other things you still want to do, other challenges, other issues you want to work on? Or?
As I said, I'm 62. I haven't yet finished at AFAC.
Right.
I
didn't mean to imply that.
No, no.
Yeah.
Well, it's been 5 years. I think the longest job I've been in has been 7 years. 2 jobs at Georgetown for 14 total. No, I don't know. I know that I have the best job I've ever had in my life, so I'm not sure I can top that. And as the boss, I can do what I want, like grow my hair long and put some earrings in. I don't have anybody complaining to me as long as I perform.
Right.
So, there's very few places that's going to allow me to do that.
Well, maybe you'll be able to top it.
I might.
Yeah, keep hopeful on that count, I
Right.
guess.
And, the other thing is, luckily I've set money aside for the future. So that doesn't motivate me any longer either.
Okay.
Okay? Listen, I made a lot more money long time ago than I'm ever making in AFAC.
Yeah. Well, that's true in a lot of nonprofit.
Yes,
a lot of
that
community
is.
service jobs.
Mhm.
Yeah. And do you feel a part of the broader Arlington community service?
I think this is one of the greatest things about Arlington. Yes, I do feel. There is a group of executive directors that deal with affordable housing, deal with all sorts of issues, helping the folks in our community do whatever needs to be done. And we all work together. I cannot tell you how many distribution sites we have at other nonprofit sites in the county, at other nonprofit organizations in the county. We all work together. It's really kind of funny that, in this county, you can become friends of the sheriff, okay? Beth Arthur can come up to you and hug you. It's really kind of weird sometimes with a sheriff hugging you. But you get to know everyone, and I've certainly met, a lot of principals at the schools. I know the superintendent very well, county board members. This is a community that really speaks together and works together. And I think that, a lot of that has to do, or a good part of it has to do with the work of Leadership Arlington.
Right.
I did go there.
I was meant to ask you about your
program.
leadership experience. That was a couple of years ago.
Yes, it was. In 11, their signature program.
And we should explain, it's a weekly program
It's
that goes for about...
It's a monthly program.
It's a monthly program.
Yeah, they've got several programs.
Okay.
They've got their signature programs for professionals, and then they've got a young professional
Right.
program and a high school program.
Right.
And each program has their different cycles. But the signature program, their top program, is 1 day a month for 12 months.
Okay.
And there you really do meet others in the community and, of course, the leadership of the county government.
Right.
And it's been a very great experience.
Right.
And that's how you get to know people quickly, get to understand them well, and become part of that leadership group here in Arlington County,
Right.
which is a really vibrant group.
Right. All right. Well, thank you. I want to thank our volunteer crew here at Arlington Independent Media. They've been terrific. We've had Hilary Freer and Steve Cordle in the booth. We've had David Cervantes and Patrick McCleary on camera. But most of all, I want to thank Charlie Meng for working so hard for so long to make his communities a better place to live. Thank you very much.
Thank
All right, thank you.